Good evening and welcome to the NC Speakeasy. It is Wednesday, April 22nd. I am Chris Green and I'm joined by my normal co-host, Mr. Mark Skog. How are we tonight, Mark?
I'm doing great, Chris. How are you?
I am doing quite well. We've got the Cavaliers in the playoffs, so I've been enjoying the first couple of games there. The Indians suck, and the Browns are out of rehab, or at least some of them are. We'll see how the rest of them show up. But let's go ahead and get started with some Cavaliers talk here. So, how about them Cavs?
So far so good. It was interesting watching this last game last night because I think our expectations of these Cavs are so high and justifiably so. And I think that we thought, well, we're going to waltz our way through the series 4-0. And I think that will probably still happen. I mean, it's got a good possibility of happening. But I think we were going to really I think the expectation for the fans, myself included, was that we would cruise through some of these games. And that really kind of hasn't been the case. Boston's a scrappy team, and the Cavs have shown some flaws in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And, afterwards I was like, well, man, I'm glad we won, and I'm not foolish enough, being a Cleveland fan, to ever look a win as a bad thing or look down upon a win. So I'll take it any way I can get it. But, I felt a little bit like, wow, I expected a little bit more out of this team. And this morning, looking at the box scores and feeling it over, I think I feel a little bit better about it. The Celtics team, and we are, and they're just never really going to be able to hang with us in that department. But, I thought, wow, the offense just didn't feel great. The Celtics came out with a lot more energy than we did. I was watching the game and they showed a replay of Brad Stevens in the Celtics huddle, and he said something about we're being more physical than them, and if that keeps up, that's really going to work. And I thought he's right; they are being more physical than us. And so, but in looking at the box score, we only shot 24% from three, and the 3-point shot is going to be a big thing for the Cavs. Mm-hmm. And this series is a good example why. LeBron is being kind of the primary playmaker on this team. And so when he's got the ball, the Celtics are trying to double him, and he's passing out, and the guys are passing out, and they're finding open men. But so far, JR and Shumpert and Kevin Love, these guys aren't shooting well, and that's going to keep teams in the game with us and really rely on Kyrie and scoring load. And that's really kind of what's happened in these last two games. And I'd like to think that the open shots will start to fall. We've seen that enough from this team that those open shots will be there, and some of these 3-point shooters that we have are really going to start nailing them. And I think that made me feel a little bit better about, I wouldn't call it a shaky win, but just a win that we didn't really dominate. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, Boston is like that little pesky gnat that you just can't get rid of. You keep swatting at them, and it flies away, and then it flies back and is annoying you. And they've been a really scrappy team since they made all their trades. And the second half, they had the second best record in the East. So I think a lot of people have not exactly given them enough credit. I know they have no superstars on their team, but take a look at San Antonio. I mean, I know they have Duncan and they have Parker, but Ginobili isn't Ginobili of old anymore. Parker's getting up there. Duncan's pushing late 30s, but everybody else on that team, well, you have Kawhi Leonard, who is probably their best player.
He is their best player at this point.
But everybody else is very nondescript on that team, yet they still managed to win 60 games and are in it for the championship the last several years. But I'm not saying Boston is the Spurs, because they're absolutely not. But they're just that team. They don't have a ton of offense. You don't know many of their players, but they play hard. They scrap because they have to, and I think this is actually a good thing for the Cavaliers. If they had just coasted in this first series, I think that could have spelled some trouble against Chicago, which I think Chicago will definitely come out against Milwaukee. So I think this is definitely a good thing that Boston is putting them to the test. I don't think it's. I think there's been struggles at the beginning, but I really haven't felt like they were in trouble at any point. I don't know if you remember back the last time the Cavaliers played Boston in 2010. It seemed like every game the Cavaliers would jump out to this huge lead
That's right.
Boston, and then Boston would just come back, and at the end of the game they won. It wasn't always pretty, but they did it. And that's kind of how it's been so far in these two games. The other thing that I was a little bit disappointed about is I loved what I saw from Kevin Love in the first game. I know he didn't shoot very well, but you saw him in the post scrapping and fighting and getting into position and getting inside shots. Whereas he seemed like he was doing a little more of what he's done most of the season, hanging around the three-point line in the second game. He wasn't down in the post. He was in the post some, but not as much as he had been in the first game, which I really liked that in the first game, and I was a little bit disappointed in the second one.
Well, the one thing I would say about Love is that I thought he moved well last night, and that is a positive for me because I'm a person who is attributing a number of his struggles on his back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I am. You know, I know there is a fit issue, and he clearly has had to make the biggest adjustment of his game and not being the focal point of an offense. And I think that he's done a great job in a lot of ways of that. You know, he's not really complaining. I know a lot of people want to read into body language. I'm not really kind of that guy, so I'm going to let that stuff go. There might be truth in that, whatever. I'm just not going to focus on that. But so I felt that some of what's going on with him is his back, because he is just not, and I don't care what anybody says, he's just not the same scorer in the post. Yes, the Cavs want him out on the perimeter for spacing things, and they play really well when he's in the lineup. I don't have the stats. I've seen some guys put it out there as some of the best 5 combinations. And their offensive efficiency when he's on the court is astronomical. It's really good. He offers a lot in ways that maybe people don't appreciate in the box score. That being said, I don't think that's his primary issue. I think that so far this season, I think one of his primary issues has been his back, because he is not the scorer in the post that he was in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So to see him move well, that reverse dunk off the alley-oop.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And I was like, where? I mean, I didn't know that he had it in him. So if his back is feeling well, if some of these days off, like there's not going to be any back-to-back games, if he's kind of getting some rest in there, and if his back's holding up all right, I'll take that as a positive, even though I agree with your assessment of him from last night. But the positive from that is him moving. Once again, I think the key, I mean, Shump and JR got to hit a certain percentage in their threes, and I think that's going to be real key to their offense. You know, there was an interesting chat on Bull and Fox today, and they didn't get into it much, but Bull was trying to point out that the Cavs need to be better defensively. And so I started to look it up, and, you know, they've done a good job percentage-wise against Boston in this series, if you look at Boston's numbers. But Boston's not a good offensive team.
Yeah.
And so, but you and I, and we touched upon this many times throughout the year, talked about where the Cavs need to be as far as defensively, their defensive efficiency. And they were ranked 20th this year. Now, that stat is somewhat deceptive because clearly they got better.
Yeah, they were worst in the league for the first half of the season, and then they
got better.
Yeah.
But I went through and I took a look at the last, based off that conversation I was hearing on the radio, I took a look at the last 10 years worth of NBA champs and to see where they were ranked in their defensive efficiency. So from the Pistons in 2004 up to the Spurs last year, and they're all consistently, if not in the top 10, in the top 5. Second, first, third, first, fifth, seventh. The one outlier is the 2006 Miami Heat, which was ranked 17th. So clearly it can happen without great defensive efficiencies, but we will need to see the Cavs step it up as they go forward against better offensive teams. I don't think that the Bulls are that, but I bet you if Atlanta makes it on through, Atlanta will be that team. And I'm curious as how they'll handle it when they get to that point. But, you know, so far, I mean, there's not. I'm pleased overall. I know we can nitpick here and there, but I'm pleased overall. And one of the reasons I'm pleased, and I'm curious what you think about this being out on the West Coast, Chris, is that no team has looked great. You know, we're all like thinking, well, the Cavs, man, this is it. We're the favorites. We're going to roll on through. Well, the truth is that Golden State's had their struggles with New Orleans. Yes, they've won and they've done well, but they haven't looked like gang beaters. And and same with, the Clippers look fantastic in that first game against the Spurs, but we'll see what they bring tonight. No team has run any team off the court so far, especially amongst the challengers. And so that also gives me a sense of like, okay, that's good. That's good. Nobody's dominating. It's not like the Cavs are in a spot where we're expecting them to win by 20, 25, and they're winning by 10. Everybody else is kind of fallen into this role as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, right now, Atlanta's not as struggling with Brooklyn. So, I mean, that's not a team that anybody really expected them to struggle with, but they're struggling with them. I mean, it's a 7-point game. It has been most of the game. Memphis is cruising a little. They're up by 11, but I mean, the Pelicans have given the Warriors a challenge. I mean, I don't know that a lot of people were expecting that, but some of that has to do with the length that the Pelicans have, and some of that has to do with the Warriors shooting. I mean, they are a jump shooting team. They live and die by that. And really the key to stopping the Warriors is stopping Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. If you can hold one or both of them down, you're going to win the game, because the rest of the guys, while they're decent, they're all role players. The majority of the offense comes from those two. So, and that was a key to when the Cavaliers beat up on the Warriors the last time they played them in Cleveland. They shut those two down, and they dominated that game.
The Warriors do what they do so well, and they're such an underrated defensive team, and not to harp on that, but they were ranked first defensive efficiently this year.
Yep.
And so they clearly – Steve Kerr's just done such a great job. They were good with Mark Jackson, but clearly they weren't playing the right kind of offense. And now they're sparked and they're responding to him and going. And let me say this, watching Anthony Davis play against them, I can't think of a player that I wouldn't trade for him in the NBA. Maybe LeBron exception simply because of the situation he's in. But Anthony Davis is just tremendous. I mentioned this on Twitter last week, and somebody said, "What about Andrew Wiggins?" I was like, I would trade Andrew Wiggins.
What?
I would trade Andrew Wiggins for Anthony Davis without a second thought. I mean,
nobody would trade Andrew or Anthony Davis for Andrew Wiggins. I mean,
yeah, you would take Davis in that trade every day.
Yeah,
it's just remarkable how also easy his transition to the NBA is. And here's the strange thing. I expected him to come in and dominate on the defensive end and struggle offensively. But if anything, he's mastered the offensive side a lot quicker than you would ever imagine. He's just so fluid. He's such a wonderful player to watch. And that Golden State series is a lot of fun to watch. I mean, here's the thing. We're all, of course, consumed with the Cavs, and as well we should be. But the truth is the Cavs series is not – like if I was an average fan, I'd tune in for a little bit to see what Kyrie and LeBron are doing. But there's nothing intriguing about the series. All those series out west are intriguing to me, every single one of them. It's such a fun conference. And so, this is why I don't care how the Cavs make it through. I just want them to make it through. We sat on the podcast last week, and Paul, who I love, said, I want Chicago. I want to bring it to Chicago. Yeah. I said, if all of Chicago gets swine flu, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Let me get through. I do not care. I'm not trying to settle grudges. I just want to get to the finals the easiest way possible, because the West, nothing's going to be easy for anybody out there, even Golden State.
Yeah, well, I got a kick out of all of you guys talking about Indiana last week. They didn't even make the playoffs.
Yeah, that was the fun. Well, this is the thing for me. People were really reacting for a while there like, oh, man, I don't want the Cavs to see Indiana in the playoffs. And I'm thinking, what am I missing something? Because I see a team that's 10 games under 500 and
Mhm.
whose best player is barely making it back into the fold. Yes, I can see the intangibles of Indiana, but they're not. I don't know. There's no team up until Derrick Rose kind of started to come back, and I'm not 100% sold on him.
Mhm.
But there was no team that bothered me in the East except Atlanta, and Atlanta still scares me. I don't care what kind of struggles they're having right now. I think the type of offense they run and the way they play can give the Cavs trouble.
Sure, absolutely. It has all year. I mean, just because of
Sure.
the playoffs, there's no reason to think that that's going to change. I don't think any of us expect the Cavaliers to magically come out and become the Spurs defensively against them, and they definitely aren't as efficient on offense. I mean, you're talking about the three-point shooting from yesterday, and that's been one of my bigger concerns is they rely so much on the three-point shot. If they're not hitting that, they can be in trouble because they tend to fall in love with that shot. So whether it's going or not.
Well, that's where you want to see LeBron get down into the post or the mid post
Yeah.
and see Love get in there. And I noticed that they really tried to work the ball into Mozgov a lot
Yep.
yesterday, more than I expected. And so we need to see that. One other thing I want to touch upon, and it's really kind of interesting to me because I looked at his box score this morning, is Tristan Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have any points. I'm not even sure he took a shot yesterday, and he was fantastic out on the court. He really was. He is so good for his role. He's played it so well. He seemed to grab every key rebound early in that game when Boston was bringing all the energy and crashing the glass hard and killing us on offensive rebounds. He seemed to make every tip pass out, like batted ball. He was all over the place, and his play doesn't show up in the box score. But I will tell you, I am very happy when I see him out on the court. I am very comfortable with him out there. He knows what he's doing with what he does. They're not asking him to do more than he's capable of, and I think what he's doing is really well. I think he's going to win us a game, not from a big shot or anything like that, but just come in and give us energy and really be a key to one of these games coming down the road here.
Absolutely, his rebounding, especially his offensive rebounding, is huge. I mean, I've been critical of him. I know that I think the defense does suffer some when he's in there, especially when Mozgov is out. But he does a lot with the offensive rebounding. I mean, it showed up big time last night. You could see him in there fighting and brawling. So I probably don't give him as much credit as he deserves normally, but I will definitely say he's shown up big in these first two games.
Yeah. I think that he. Look, he has trouble scoring in the post. It takes him a long time to get his shot off.
Yep.
His jump shot is, to be generous, a work in progress. But he is all over the place. He's kind of Andy Jr., from when Varejao was really hustling and doing all that stuff. And you need that kind of guy on that team, and he's really it. He's really it.
Absolutely. So real quick to just touch on, they say that how people respond in their first playoff series and stuff like that, you never know, and everybody was all concerned. I wasn't concerned about Kyrie, and he's obviously shown that this doesn't bother him. He's doing exactly what I expect him to do, which was rise up like he always does in the big games. Kevin Love has done well. What do you think about David Blatt so far?
So far, his rotations have been interesting because they've been a little different. And I don't have a problem with anything he's done because he's, in this series he's playing with house money, so he knows it, so he's got an advantage. And to take the poker analogy a little further, he can use his pod advantage to kind of make his way through some of this because he can keep throwing things at Boston that they don't have. I would like to see. Look, Delly's always an issue. We have him. I don't know how much I can complain at this point. It is what it is. I thought he got way too many minutes in the first half last night. But
he got too many minutes because Irving had 2 fouls in the first half.
Yeah, and I would like to see, I don't know what to do in that situation. This is kind of the bed we've made that you would lie in it. You wouldn't think Delly would be a rotation player. on a team that would be shooting for an NBA Finals.
Mhm.
Okay, but he is, and so we have to live with that. So if Delly's on there, I saw, what do I really want to say? He took a couple shots that I wouldn't have loved, but okay, so
Yeah.
so be it. That's
Mhm.
what we're going to have to deal with. But it was also putting Perkins in at points. I'm not sure what Perkins gives us at this point. There's so many other people I would rather see in the game than Perk. And the last thing I was just laughing because I was watching last night and somebody gives the ball to Perk at the high post and he tries to make an interior pass and of course it goes right out of bounds. And I thought, did somebody willingly give the ball to Kendrick Perkins on offense? Why is this happening? He shouldn't touch the ball if not to just take it and immediately give it to somebody within 3 feet of him. Like, we got to not recognize your situation and what you're doing. But overall, back to Blatt. Yes, you can always nitpick these questionable substitutions, but so far so good. I think it'll be really interesting. NBA coaches in the playoffs you really notice how good they are based off of adjustments as they go along. We all remember Mike Brown when he was coaching this team, and we got into trouble in the playoffs. I think the Orlando series specifically, when Orlando just shot the lights out of the ball, and he seemed to not have a plan B. I don't feel like there was any adjustment made at any point in that series that I can remember. Blatt has not been faced with that yet. So the ultimate answer to your question, he's been fine in 2 games, but I'm not sure he's had a challenge that we can really judge him off of.
Okay. Well, the one thing I'll say about Perkins being in yesterday, I think some of that was because several of the big men had multiple fouls, so he was kind of the next man up deal. They just needed to get a big body in there, somebody to throw a couple of nasty screens on Boston too, to try to slow them down because they've been beating up on the Cavaliers players. I mean, you see them; they're up in everybody's grill and all that. I mean, they're obviously not intimidated, so they're all over the Cavs at this point. And even you've seen the frustration already boiling over with J.R. Smith at points. I mean, in all honesty, he's been a non-factor on the offensive side in both games. He has definitely made some impacts on defense, but offensively, he has not been a factor at all, which they're going to need him at some point to be a factor.
Yeah, they will, and that's going to be the main thing that I'm going to look for in Game 3 is can JR start hitting that open shot when it comes to him? Can Shumpert hit the open shot when it comes to him? Those guys. That's going to be my first thing I look at. The second thing I really want to see a little bit is coming down the stretch. What kind of offense are they really running? Because LeBron kind of, he took over in that fourth quarter, but it was a bit of the 1-on-5 LeBron. And if he's taking it to the rim, I really don't have a complaint with that. If he's taking heat check threes and pulling up for fadeaway mid-range jumpers, then that's when I have an issue. But him getting to the rim is critical for a team that seems to rely on the three and can't always and weren't hitting it yesterday. I don't want to say can't always hit it because we actually hit it pretty well, but they didn't yesterday. So that's when they go to Boston. That's what I really want to keep an eye on and see what happens.
Absolutely. So, so what's your prediction? Are they going to finish it in 4, or is it going to go 5?
I'd say 4. I say 4. I think they still have too much to them, and I think that these shots that have been missed will start to fall. And then I don't think if we're hitting threes like that, it's hard to see where Boston's going to generate the offense to stay with us. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll go 4. I think there's a chance it'll go 5, but I still think it's going to go 4. It's just, though they only won by 8 yesterday, once they got ahead, they kind of just seemed to stay there, and it was almost like a 50-50 game after that. You just traded shots, and they didn't really feel in trouble. I mean, I know they got it within 2, I think, at one point in the fourth quarter, but even then, it just didn't feel like they were actually in trouble. So I think it'll probably go 4. I think there's a small chance Boston may sneak one out in Boston, but I still think it's going to go 4 as well. So let's go ahead and move on from the Cavaliers, and let's well, let's look over at that team that is across the street from them, and yeah, they've had a fantastic start to the season, haven't they?
Yeah, it's oh man, it's been rough. It's been rough. I've watched just about every game. I really didn't get a chance to watch much of today's. Just too much
Lucky
going on.
you.
Yeah, and so the starting pitchings, you can't really complain. I mean,
Starting pitching's been fine.
House has been
Bullpen,
bad, but it's two starts, and Salazar pitched well when he on his call up, and I'm glad they're keeping him in the rotation. I think that's the right move. I'll applaud Tito for that. Um, and Bauer's been lights out, but man, they are just not hitting, and the bullpen's been a bit scary so far.
bullpen has been very inconsistent, and the hitting, as I think we talked about early on in spring training, I was still concerned about the hitting after last year, and not much has changed.
Well, certainly the injuries at
Dick
various
Gomes hurts, yeah.
yeah, and even Brantley being out for a little
Yeah.
bit, and I that's a concern. I hope he's doing well. He looked okay in his swings. I don't notice anything,
Hmm.
but you and I had expressed concerns about Lonnie Chisenhall, and so far, those concerns are bearing themselves out. Yes, I think. Okay, I think we need to clarify something here because I see this bouncing around a lot on
Hmm.
Twitter and on the radio and social media. You can't write off the Indians at that point. I think we
No.
all know this. It's idiotic to do so.
Hmm.
However, you can be frustrated at these losses. You can be concerned going forward. These are all legitimate complaints. And I think that these groups of fans tend to start to gang up on each other because,
No.
yes, because there's the sky is falling group, and then there's the I'm burying my head in the sand, everything's going to be okay group. And I think we need to all just kind of chill with that and admit this isn't good. This isn't a good start. It doesn't mean the season's over. It doesn't mean they can't bounce back. And law of averages would say the bullpen's going to get better and the hitting's going to get better. Okay, so we can all agree to that. But that being said, it's totally legit to complain about this team right now. They are not playing well. I'm concerned with these slow starts that they seem to keep throwing out. And it really stinks that every time they seem to have an opportunity to capture the fan base, they seem to be crapping their pants with this. And that is not – it's not something that I think Tito needs to worry about as far as capturing the fan base. But, I mean, you would think that take this opportunity while the Cavs are in the playoffs and the Browns are killing themselves – that the Indians could really grab this and run with it, and they can't seem to do it.
Well, here's two things to your point about the hitting and the bullpen. I think they could stay this way. I mean, bullpens are notoriously unpredictable year to year. One year
That's
you
true.
can have an awesome bullpen, the next year, I mean, that's why relievers aren't as valuable as starting pitchers, just because of the fact that they tend to be inconsistent, which is one of the reasons they're in the bullpen in the first place. Um, the hitting, this is a bit of a trend. This isn't, I mean, yes, they can turn it around, but I don't know how much they're going to turn it around. I mean, last year they struggled for a good part of the year to score more than 3 to 4 runs in a game, and it's kind of the same thing. And, we talked about that. Other than Brandon Moss, this is the same team from last year. Nothing's really changed. The only difference is you got instead of Cabrera, you have Ramirez. So, but I mean, it's not like you're gaining anything offensively there. You're really gaining on defense, if anything, with Ramirez. So I'm not giving up on the season, but I could definitely see this sticking like it is. I mean, the starting pitching has been tremendous so far, with the exception of House and then McAllister, which, I mean, who among us really thought he
Yeah.
belonged in the starting rotation at this point anyway? Carrasco, Kluber, Bauer have been phenomenal. Salazar was great in his first start. So starting pitching, I'm not really concerned about. Bullpen, Cody Allen has been very inconsistent so far this year. It's pretty much either he's lights out or it's meltdown city. I mean, he's got I think a 20 earned run average right now. He's had 2 games where he's given up more than 4 runs already. So he's a little bit of a concern right now. I mean, the other thing is with bullpens too, other than their inconsistency, just think about how much Francona used them last year. So you got to worry about that kind of stuff too going into the next season. So that can put strain on their arms. It may not seem like a big deal, but it can be. And I don't know where this is going. I mean, their track records say they should be turn it around and be solid, and they may be fine. But it's a little bit disconcerting when you have 2 of the 3 parts of your club. And actually, I would even say 3 of the 4. Defense hasn't exactly been spectacular again. I don't know that we were expecting to be Gold Glove caliber based on last year, but I wouldn't say it's been stellar. It's been okay, I guess. But yeah, it's just the club's failing on 3 of the 4 facets right now, and that's not a good way to start the season.
And it shows in a 5-9 record. You know,
yeah.
Let's face it. The one thing I would say on the bullpen, you're right. Bullpens are erratic. You're very right. I don't do fantasy baseball anymore, but I used to for a little while. And when I did, you kind of recognize that hitting tended to be, you knew what you were going to get, what you were buying or drafting in fantasy and hitting. You kind of knew what you were going to get on ace.
Good night.
Good night, buddy. On ace,
Good night,
on ace starters.
My son has the same pajamas.
And so on the starters, you knew what you were kind of getting on your best starters, right? But bullpens were notoriously erratic. And but the other thing that I noticed is that, and I've seen the Indians do this, you can remake a bullpen on the fly.
Sure.
So with a good GM, a decent farm system, and some key trades, you can pick up pieces to a bullpen to try and fix things, provided those key pieces aren't like your closer or your your key setup guy, and I think we've seen everybody stink it up a little bit in the bullpen. So that's why I'm kind of hoping, I just hope this is some early preseason, early season stuff.
Yeah.
I think you're right. You make a fair point on a trend on hitting, and it is a trend that's holding. I'm hoping that some of the key guys will kind of step it up a bit. I have expressed concern on Kipnis and Chisenhall. I'll still have concern on those 2 until they begin to produce regularly. I mean, there's almost no way you can. And, I mean, Chris, we're coming into another series with Detroit, who just kicks the crap out of us every time. I don't know what to do. I don't know what the key thing is. I don't know if Tito's got to make a bigger deal out of playing Detroit. I don't know if he's got to make it seem like it's just another game. I don't know if Detroit just has that much more talent than us that they kick us around so much. That's probably the key. But they got to do they got to do something. They got to figure this out, because Detroit's running away with things, and winning the division's the best way to get in. And it seems shocking to say this after 14 games, but it is a concern. Detroit running away is a concern.
Yeah, I mean, Detroit. I heard the podcast that John and Chris and Paul did, and most of them were pretty down on Detroit. I was pretty shocked by that. I mean, I told you before, I still expected them to win the division this year, so I'm not nearly as down on them as everybody else seems to be. But and then so far, they're making me look smart. I mean, anything's possible, but they still have some big bats there, and their pitching is bad. I mean, and you think about it, Verlander's been out. Joe Nathan is probably going to be out for a long time now, from what I heard today. So they're doing that with injuries. I mean, the Indians lost Gomes, and yes, Brantley's back is bothering him, but I can say that those 2 are probably just as valuable as he is. So they're still clicking. They just have other strengths that they can continue to fall back on, and you're right, they have more talent than we do. The Gomes injury hurts because in all honesty, he is the only right-handed bat on this team. And I mean, we've all had this discussion about they continue to not get the right-handed bat, and I mean, it's just over and over. So we don't sound like a broken record, but the fact of the matter is this is a very left-handed lineup. It has been a very left-handed heavy lineup, and I don't see that changing anytime soon, unfortunately. And
No,
as
it's
they
not.
continue to struggle, they're just gonna. There's not much. I just don't see them making the moves. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't know.
Teams seem to be able to throw any old left-hander at us, and it gives us trouble. It just
Yeah.
does. We've seen it over and over again,
Mhm.
and I think that is. I mean, if you were playing the Indians, I would do whatever I could to get lefties up against us
Mhm.
because we're not handling it well.
Well, they're not
Now,
handling anybody right now.
well, that's true. That's a
I
valid
think they've
point.
been
I mean,
shut out what, 4 times already this year.
oh my God, is that right? Oh
I
Lord.
know it's at least. I'll look for sure, but I know that it's been at least two for sure. So, and including today. But I'll look. Go ahead.
No, I'm laughing. I had a junior high teacher who made a bet with us one time. He said, "I'll bet you." He was like, "I'll add the Indian score up every game, and you multiply the Indian score up every game, and I bet you I'll come up with a bigger number than you." And I, not thinking about it, I'm like, "Sure, I'll handle that."
Yeah.
First shutout they came, I was like, "Son of
Yeah.
a," like not realizing, not putting the math together. But yeah, I mean, 4 shutouts already. That's not good. It's
Yeah.
really not good. So I don't know. Yeah, look, this is the thing with an Indian season, not just a baseball season in general. We have to wait. I don't know how much we can ultimately extrapolate out from this. I think we can say,
Mhm.
okay, these 14 games, it hasn't been good. There are trends that we're not liking. But you and I can sit down a month from now and feel 180 degrees differently on this team, and we still won't have a feel for what the real Indians are at that point.
Sure.
It's really not until we're getting into June, into the middle of June, that we'll have a really solid feel for what this team is, because we've seen first half and second half changes tremendously with this team over the years. And so I think it's one of the beauties of baseball, and it's one of the curses at this point, because we can talk and talk about them, but the truth is that we don't know ultimately where they're going to be. We can only see the short-term trends right now, and the short-term trends aren't good.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I'm wrong. They've only been shut out twice, but they've scored 1 run in 2 other games.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's not great. It's not
No,
great.
no, it's still bad enough.
Well, and as you and I talked, this front part of this season was so loaded with in-division games. I mean, you
Uh-huh.
read that schedule to me, and I was stunned at how
Mhm.
many in-division games they are. And so to start off slow, to have some injuries, and to have a bullpen that's imploding, that's problematic. The one
Mhm.
thing we really wanted was for the team to get started off fast. And all hand, applaud
Yeah,
the
they're
starting
three and
pitch.
eight in division, by the way, right now.
Yeah, I mean, well, applaud the pitching, starting pitching all day long. We can't give them enough praise,
Hmm.
but we're still 5-9, and I don't have. I mean, going into this weekend, you just can't feel good with who we're playing and with the way we're playing.
Yeah, it's been a struggle. I mean, it's hard to watch and listen to them right now, and I mean, you expect a decent outing from the pitchers, and I mean, look, Kluber fell apart today and gave up 6 runs. It's going to happen sometimes. Even
Yes, it is.
your stud pitchers will struggle at times, and I think the offense is combined to score 3 runs in his 3 starts. Or
I
no,
mean,
two runs in his 3 starts. Excuse me.
he doesn't necessarily strike you as the guy to press, but it wouldn't be shocking to see him press with the lack of run support.
Yeah. So it's yeah. Anyway, so let's we're depressed as we is right now. Why don't we move on to other depressing topics? So
Well,
I understand you have a bit of a beef to pick with some people.
well,
So why don't we go there?
it's not necessarily beef. I like to joke that I was going to talk down to a lot of people, but it's
To
actually
the
people.
infidels.
Yeah, it's actually people on Twitter that I like, and I'm going to name them by names because they're good accounts out there. There's a couple things going on with the Browns before I get into that. First of all,
Not the uniforms. Please, God, tell me you're not going to talk about the uniforms.
I don't care about uniforms.
Okay, good.
I really don't. It's funny. I kind of ranted and raved a little bit about them before they came out and right as they came out, and then I kind of had to catch myself and laugh. And I'm like, I'm not buying a jersey. I haven't
Yeah.
bought a jersey since Tim Couch. I'm too old to like wear football jerseys around. I'll wear a baseball jersey because it looks a little better on me, but I'm not wearing football jerseys around anyway. So what do I really care?
Hmm.
So the uniform stuff aside, here's my thing. Um, I'm absolutely stunned we've got to this point without a ton of draft talk. You and I talk sports all the time. We have yet to talk anything about the Browns draft. This has just kind of sailed by. I see it starting to pick up, especially today on Twitter, and so that's what I'm going to touch upon. But it has not been the dominating conversation in town on the draft. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's where we're picking.
I do.
Okay, you tell me your theory on that.
Apathy has set in.
I think that is a big part of it. I think the Cavs are a part of it, and I think
apathy, I think the Cavs, and I think the fact that when free agents starting and the Browns doing stupid shit like saying this is when we're going to release our uniforms on they start emphasizing that stuff. I think that has only enhanced the apathy and the disgust with the Browns organization right now. So people are just don't even want to deal with them.
So in that regard, rumors have started to pop up, of course. Rumors from this guy at his website and that guy at his website. Sources, as we all like to laugh about. So, of the Browns making a move for Mariota. Trading 12, 19, and 43, picks to move up to 2 and draft Mariota. And this discussion started popping up online. And it brought in interesting response because I think I sparked it from and got a response from Sports Yelling, who she runs a great Twitter feed. She's really enjoyable.
I thought she only talked about the Indians.
Generally, but she is a big Browns fan, and she's a Browns fan just like the rest of us are, and that she complains and things frustrate her and all that stuff just like the rest of us. And so it's not her primary focus, but she jumped in with something today that I thought was interesting. And I think I may have sparked it because she used a phrase that I used when chatting with Ken Carmen and JN. So I'm pointing out that, look, if you think Mariota is the guy, if the Browns brass say, that's our guy, that's our franchise quarterback, we believe in him, I said, going up to 2 is totally defensible. Trading 12, 19, 43, and you got to go get him. Now, Mariota just happens to be the topic of this, but it's not really it. It's the philosophy of this. And my point is, if he's the guy, and Nick Wilson was part of this conversation from 92.3, so I said, if it's the guy, you got to go get him, okay? You got to believe in it and go get him. And I think that's my philosophy on this, is that without a franchise quarterback, you're going to be wallowing in it. And I thought it was interesting because Sports Yelling kind of responded, and I'm just going to read her real quick. And this is not a knock on her at all. A totally legit opinion to have. But I thought it was a good jumping off point. She said, the question of is he the guy has been asked by Cleveland football fans for probably 19 years now. She said, the flaw is you trust anyone to find the guy. Said they've all thought lots of people were the guy. At one time, Brandon Weeden was the guy. And I kind of responded back, and we had a nice little back and forth. And I said, sorry, I disagree. I said, just because the wrong guys have made that pick in the past and they picked the wrong people doesn't mean the philosophy of finding the guy is wrong. I think that is ultimately the right philosophy. If you look at who has been to the playoffs in, let's just say, the AFC in the last 10 years, or been to the Super Bowl, it's Peyton Manning, it's Ben Roethlisberger, it's Tom Brady. Tom Brady obviously being the huge outlier on how he was discovered, but nonetheless, you have to have that quarterback. And so I find this interesting that people would think, she then responded back to me, the idea of the guy is just a lottery ticket. Like you're just hoping to behind hope and it's not really building a team. And I really felt like I wanted to get this out there, that searching for that quarterback.
Why do I all of a sudden feel like we're talking about the Matrix?
It does feel that way sometimes. Searching for that franchise quarterback is not even if you get it wrong, is not a search in futility. It is the way to build a team. That doesn't prevent you from doing other things to build your team, but you ultimately have to get him.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think he is it, go up and get him. My issue with the Browns over the last 15 years, aside from Tim Couch, they haven't really tried to move up and get the quarterback. Well, into them, they have taken the guy that they traded back up to get, but it's been the third quarterback off the board.
Mm-hmm.
They have tried the veteran stopgap free agent signing
Many times.
Many times. They have not said, they've not reacted with enough confidence and bravery to say, that's the guy, I'm going to deal all my cards in and go get him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the difference in this philosophy. If Mariota is not that guy, fine, don't go get him. I get that. If you don't believe in that, don't go get it. But at some point you have to, and it's been 15 years of teetering around the edges of trying to get the guy. Somebody pointed out to me as a response, she said, I think 65% of the fans last year would have told you Manziel was the guy. And I said, maybe, but the fact that the Browns didn't draft him at 4
tells you they didn't think he was.
They didn't think he was the guy. I
Yeah.
don't care. Yes, you could have gotten better value.
They didn't think
for him.
Anybody was the guy at that point, which is why they didn't take any quarterback there.
And which ultimately comes back to this debate that I've had. I had so much on Twitter last year, I can't do it anymore. But I was happy to see Ken Carman was kind of in my side, is that if you take a guy at 22, a quarterback at 22, he's still your franchise quarterback. So what did you not like about him that let him fall to 22 to you, and that you didn't go get him in the top 3? That fault, whatever that is still there. Yeah. That's why my feeling is you go up and you go get the guy. And that, I'm surprised that other fans don't kind of see it that way. I see so many people thinking, well, we'll wait. We can get a guy in the 3rd round. All right. Well, I mean, fine, draft a guy in the 3rd round, but I'm not counting on him for anything. That's a long shot.
The only reason you take the guy in the 3rd round is because you think the guy in the 1st round isn't any better than the guy in the 3rd round.
Yeah, and you think the guy in the 3rd round is just it's strictly a development. That's the lottery ticket.
Yeah.
To me, that's the guy that's the lottery ticket, not the guy that you went up for to go get. I mean, I appreciated Jacksonville's ballsiness last year to say, I think that Blake Bortles is the guy. I'm going to spend a top pick on him. I mean, I would like to see that from the Browns one of these years. I don't know when it's going to happen. So, anyways, that's my kind of rant on that. And I'll pass this link along to Sports Yelling. I hope she doesn't think I'm like singling her out. I thought it was an interesting thing that she brought up, but I felt like I wanted to expand on it further.
See, I'm very disappointed in you, Mark. I was expecting this fire and brimstone speech to the masses saying you're all fools and all that, and this was all that build up for nothing.
All right. I'm going to come in on something else then. Here, I had a second Twitter conversation, and this one I feel a little bit more fire and brimstone with.
All right.
I am shocked that, okay, first of all, people are taking a look at the schedule that just came out, and they want to start assigning wins and losses, which is about the dumbest thing you can do at this point.
They're not a playoff team?
That being said, apparently Tony Grossi said he put he was putting an over-under total at 4.5, and where would people lie on wins? And some people online were reacting like, well, clearly the over. And I'm thinking, I'd be hard pressed to bet the over. Yeah. And they were saying, we won 7 games last year. I don't see how the roster's worse. And and I took a look at it, and you know me, Chris, during the Brown season, I tried to find the positive in a lot of it. But the truth is, after the season ended and you take a step back, I felt like a lot of those wins were a bit of a mirage, a bit of an anomaly. I don't think these people arguing with me were saying, well, we can build on our 7-9 season last year with this draft and going forward. And my point is, without a quarterback, that 7-9 is an anomaly. And I don't think you could build off that 7-9 without a drastic improvement in the quarterback position. And today, we don't have that.
Well, and I mean, I haven't really been listening to sports talk lately just because every time I turn it on, it still seems like there's something about the Browns, and I'm just so sick of hearing about it. So I've been listening to so many other things. So I flipped it on this morning just to hear what they're talking about the Cavs playoff game, and I hear Phelps and Mike Cairns talking about the schedule, and they're like, oh, they're going to be 3-0 after the first 3 games. Like, really? With the quarterbacks they have now, you expect them to be 3-0? I sure as hell don't.
With a whole new offensive system.
Yeah.
And, you know, a couple of these guys who I like online were trying to say, like, well, look, I don't think we're that far off. And I said, I see a team that has the worst quarterback play in the league. I see a team that we lost a Pro Bowl center, and the whole running game fell apart. I'm sorry, how does that happen? Mac is valuable, but no center is valuable enough that your whole offense falls apart.
They shouldn't be.
They shouldn't be. And so, you know, and I see a wide receiver crew that's just a bunch of journeymen.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a tight end, you know. And then on defense, we can't generate a consistent pass rush. We can't stop the run. So tell me where we're building on this. Why is my idea that we might win 4 games, why is that such a crazy thought? I don't see the positives on this. There is
let me interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
So, and this could go into this. If they don't trade up for Mariota, do you think they're going to try to tank this season, so to speak? Now, not so much intentionally, but by going with the quarterbacks they have, can try to get as high as they can for next year.
Yes. That's exactly what I think they're going to do. I think it will be 50%. Let's see what we have in quarterbacks, and 50%. We're gonna stink.
So do you think that's the more likely scenario of them doing that as opposed to trading up for Mariota at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. I do not think that they will pull the trigger on that. I think that the starting quarterbacks, the quarterback room will be pretty much what we see, except for a late to middle round quarterback developmental quarterback that they can draft. Okay. And I think that's what we're going to have going into it. And even if they went up for Mariota, I don't expect a whole lot, you know.
Right, I don't think he starts day one.
No, and here's the thing on him. Okay, so we've been talking philosophy on this so far and bantering his name about as the guy to get. All right, so on him specifically, I love everything about him except for one thing. I love his size is great. Mm-hmm. His frame he's strong. His frame enough is that he can still put on more size to it. He is fast. He's got a great arm. I mean, it's not the best arm ever, but it's a good arm.
It's above average.
It's everything you need. He's fine with that. His arm is not going to prohibit him from doing anything in the NFL. Let's put it that way. He is a Boy Scout off the field. He's a smart guy. Here's my one problem. If it wasn't for this one problem, I would be all in on getting him. I feel like my philosophy on quarterbacks have changed in recent years, and that these college spread offenses scare the hell out of me. I just don't know if they can develop that well in order to do it. And so if you draft him, I think the goal should be exactly what they should have done with Johnny last year, and that is basically redshirt them, sit them. And I know it's hard to hear that, and Ken Carman and I have gone back and forth on this over and over again. I think that if they did draft him, and if Pettin was really calling the shots, he would sit him all year.
Mariota?
Yes,
okay.
Mariota. Ken thinks if there's a quarterback drafted in the first round, they play.
Oh, I was going to say I agree with Ken. I think if they trade up for Mariota, regardless, he is going to start on day one. I don't think he should, but I think he will.
Yeah, and I get it. And I said to Ken when we finally hashed it out, I was like, I hear you. I just hope that I think Pettin had no desire to play Johnny last year.
I 100% agree.
I think he got backed into a corner and had to play him. I'm very frustrated at Ray Farmer and the whole organization for not having a legit backup quarterback on the roster. because we stuck with a flailing Brian Hoyer too long because we had Manziel behind him and not a legitimate backup NFL quarterback that you can plug in for 3 or 4 games. And so I'm hoping that would change. Now, the way they're structuring the roster doesn't lend me to think that will change. I think that McCown is going to be your guy. I think they're going to pass on a first-round quarterback, and I think that Johnny's going to be that developmental guy, and I'm absolutely stunned at how many people are. I've seen so many people tweeting to that, like, "Oh yeah, I think Johnny will be all right," and I'm looking around like, based on what? The guy just got out of rehab. He showed you nothing last year. I mean, it's wishful thinking. I wish him all the best of luck in the world. But for the Browns to even consider having him as a legit option for this season, it's kind of asinine to me. And that's one of the reasons I think with that decision kind of clouding my picture of the Browns, that permeates to everything else that I think about them. I think that's such a bad idea. I'm having a tough time believing in the rest of your ideas going forward.
Sure. I mean, I guess the question I'm going to ask is, if they don't draft a quarterback, and I know they have McCown, I know Pet would probably prefer to start McCown, but do you think they're going to say Johnny's going to play and we're going to see if he's got anything? Hell or high water, we're either going to sink with him or we're going to swim.
If this is the quarterbacks they have going into it, God, I think it's going to be McCown. But if it's not, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's going to be awful, I think. I don't think Johnny has demonstrated anything at this point to be ready to lead an NFL team. So I don't know what it'll be. And it'll be very interesting to see. And then I think the bigger picture also is, if that's the case, can Pettin and Farmer make that move without having reassurances from our owner that they will be around for another year?
I would hope not, but who knows? I mean, he may even say, "Oh, sure, you're going to be there," and then at the end of the year, fire him anyway. Yeah, I mean,
of course.
Like I said, I don't. We've all discussed this. We don't need another freaking head coach.
No.
It's pathetic that we were relieved that he didn't get fired after this year.
100% agree, Chris. 100% agree.
I don't think the coach is the problem. I don't know about the general manager at this point. I would say he had a C- for a grade last year, and that may be generous as it is. I liked the free agents he brought in. I liked the undrafted players. Obviously, the top of the draft looked horrible. Who knows?
Who knows why that was?
Yeah. So
we really don't know. We really don't know what that was. We don't know. I mean, some people really feel that Farmer, even on the texting thing, Farmer's really biting the bullet for Jimmy.
You know what? I probably would have to agree with that. I think he is too. I don't think he's dumb enough to do that. I'm sure it goes higher, and he took the bullet because he had to. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. It would not be inconceivable for me. It would not be inconceivable that they drafted Manziel for some reasons, not all, some reasons that had nothing to do with play on the field. So, but who knows? I mean, this draft will tell me something.
Well, and that's my next question to you. Well, go ahead.
No. You ask the question.
Who are they taking? Are they trading up, or are they picking at those picks? And who are they picking, or you don't have to pick necessarily player, but position?
I have no idea on position. I don't think they stay at 12 and 19. I think they move. Okay. And I think they move to target specific players they want that are not a quarterback. Okay. I don't think a running back will be in that. I've heard discussion on Gurley or was it Melvin Gordon.
And you would know better about Gurley. I don't know anything about him. I've seen a little bit of Gordon, and I'm not after the Trent Richardson debacle. I don't know that I want any running back in the first round. So.
Yeah, and it's hard to paint every other running back with the Trent Richardson brush, but
sure.
But the reason I think you bring up a more legit point in that is taking any running back in the first round seems to be kind of foolish, given that the general availability of running backs that are awfully good just seem to run deep through a draft. I mean, it's just, you can find guys everywhere. It may sound like I'm pulling the same thing that people do for Tom Brady and saying, oh, well, when Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick. Yeah, but Tom Brady's the only one.
Yeah,
you can't have running backs.
Foster.
Yeah, there's guys all over the place.
Of them. Yeah.
So that's why I would say, and Todd Gurley's a fantastic talent. I'm not going to stand in the way, but he just tore an ACL, and these things are not. Fans still want to think, oh, it's an ACL, he'll be right back. It doesn't work that way. I saw some stat from Dr. James Andrews who did, and it was like 40% of ACL tears from NFL players, the guys aren't on a team in 2 years. Now, some of that could be it's an average player that doesn't make it through. It's not a superstar.
Not everybody is Adrian Peterson and comes back to those.
No, Adrian Peterson's the only Adrian Peterson.
Yeah.
So what I want them to do is I want them to use both first-round picks. If they're not going to go get that quarterback, if they don't feel comfortable with it, and you know what, that's fine. They don't. But I want them to use those guys on the best players available.
Yeah.
And because think about this, Chris, on this team. There is not one single position where you can say we don't need to draft another guy there. Even left tackle. Okay?
No, he's getting up there.
He's getting up there, and our right tackle is not a world beater. It's fine if you find one and you put him in at right tackle as to be the heir apparent. A center even. Look, I
think they're going to get a center because I don't think Mac's going to be back next year.
No, he's not. And and I put that one on Banner, but on Joe Banner for screwing that up. But yes, so every spot. I mean, the only thing I would say is maybe a cornerback. You wouldn't spend a first-round pick on because you just signed a guy and you have some depth there, and you just drafted a guy.
Well, actually, you drafted 3 cornerbacks last year, so
yeah. So I would probably that would be about the only thing that I would say you don't have to do. But that's why they might trade. So if the best corner falls to them and somebody really wants them, that's why they might make a move. But I more see them trading some of those picks. They got a lot of picks again. I see them more trading those picks to go up and get somebody, using some of those middle-round picks and those first-round picks to go up and say, I want that guy, I want that guy. Who that guy, I last year I got invested in trying to figure out who those guys were. This year I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It wasn't worth the time for me.
Exactly. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think they need to do one of two things. They either need to take the best player available, or if Mariota is the guy that, go do what you got to do to go get him. And you live with the consequences of whatever happens, but don't just sit back and take, like you said, and I mean, I would even say if you want Winston, I mean, I don't know that you can get him, but if that's the guy that you think is the best, then do what you got to do to get him, because you're right. Until they have a quarterback, they aren't going anywhere. Quarterbacks can make a lot of other things look much better and fix your team. So you make the decision. You either go get the quarterback if you think he's the guy. If he's not, then you take the best players available and you try to improve the rest of your team.
Yeah. So I think we're on the same page there. I mean, there's literally almost no position where if they drafted a guy, I'd be like, well, that's a mistake, because you need him everywhere. You do.
Yeah, they do.
I wouldn't spend a first-round pick on a running back, but if they loved a guy in the second round, I would not kill them for that. Do I like the 2 guys we had last year? They showed some promise, but there's nothing about the 2 of them that makes me say, oh yeah, that's a Hall of Fame guy. We can't get better there. They
aren't Adrian Peterson.
No, they're not, and that's why I think you can go ahead and say, yes, you can invest in upgrading the running back position.
All right, well, let me while we're on that topic, do you see with the trades, do you see them trading for a quarterback from another team?
Well, that's the interesting question, isn't it? I was skeptical that they had asked about Bradford. I don't know why I was skeptical. I just felt like they still wanted to see more out of Johnny, that they were going to give that another year. So by trading for a And the fact that they went out and signed McNown so
Mm-hmm.
quick, and he's not making big money as a starter, but he would be one of the highest paid backups in the league.
Yeah.
And so with that in mind, I got the impression, no, they're not searching for that guy. They may draft a guy, but I think that they kind of want to see Johnny this year and see what they have out of him. So I was a little skeptical. But there's been so much smoke around them talking about Bradford, I kind of believe it.
Yeah.
So could that happen? Possibly, but when I heard Chip Kelly talk about how much he liked Bradford, maybe I'm a sucker, but I kind of bought in to what he was saying. I got the impression they didn't trade for him just to move him. I think they'll be quite happy if they have to start the year with Bradford, in Philadelphia.
Well,
would they move him if they could get Mariota? Maybe, but that's it. I'm not buying into the Phillip Rivers stuff.
Okay.
I don't think the Browns. It seems to me if San Diego wants to get Mariota, the person they need to talk to is just with Tennessee.
Sure.
Tennessee needs a quarterback. If Tennessee wants to move out of 2, they got makings there. So it's hard for me to see how the Browns would fit in to grab that. But you never know. It could happen.
I don't even know. I'm not sure. How old is Rivers now? He's got to be in at least his early 30s.
I think he's 32, 33.
Okay. So, I mean, you're looking at, I think he was better last year than he had been the last couple of years, but, I mean, you're still looking at maybe a couple of years left in the tank before he really starts to decline, maybe. So, I don't know.
I have no problem if they want to get him. I would applaud them.
Sure. Well, yeah, he's going to be better than anything they have.
Sure. And what I will say is he does scare me. He seems an old 33.
Well, he's been the crap beat out of him, yeah.
He doesn't move well. Now,
Bernie-esque in his movement.
He is, and maybe I'm clouded by that memory of how badly Bernie broke down, that I feel like that's coming from Phillip Rivers. But Rivers has never moved well, and so maybe I'm being a little too negative about his physical attributes from that standpoint. But
he is 33, by the way.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, but if you had to move one of those picks to get him, go ahead and do it. Yeah, I mean, who's going to say no to that?
Well, I mean, and then the other guy out there who's even older that you've heard about is Drew Brees, and I can't see that at all.
I can't see that either. That seems like a crazy thought to me.
Yeah.
I think that's an issue where you just get some rumors floating around.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not sure, how much that actually comes into play. But a week from now, we'll see where they're at and see what they're taking. I think that will give us a really good gauge as to kind of what we're going to see out of this team this year.
Yeah. Either way, it should be interesting. Whether it's what the fans want, I don't know. Like I said, I haven't been listening. So, what is your impression? Do they want them to go for Mariota, or they want to stay away from him?
No, I think the reaction to Mariota has been negative, and I think that there has been.
Is that because of the Ohio State game, though? In the national championship,
and
he wasn't even that bad at it. To be honest.
He wasn't. He was playing without his 2 best wide receivers and had a ton of drops. I mean, he throws to wide open guys. There's legitimate negatives about the style of play with him, but he has a nice skill set, and I think that he is. I think what I loved that I heard from Greg Landry, the draft guy, who I think is really good, and he said, "Look, I think his floor is Alex Smith.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
I think his ceiling is much higher, and if you buy that, that's awfully nice, man. That's awfully nice that would be his floor. You know, I'd take that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, let's see. So we're just past the 7 o'clock hour here on the West Coast, 10 o'clock. So, any other thoughts on this fine evening before we wrap it up?
No, my allergies are killing me here. It's amazing how much medicine I have to take for these 2 weeks. Is it like that? Is it that bad for you out there?
Yeah, I'm taking Zyrtec every day. So
it's like I'm popping Claritin like you wouldn't believe, like they're Skittles. Yeah. So it's awful at this time of year out east. I don't remember this bad in Cleveland. I don't know. but they have also heard that allergies kill you more when you get older, which is rough. I can't imagine being JN and getting allergies, man, as old as that guy is. You know,
when he sneezes, dirt comes out.
Yeah, that's right. He's gonna curse me out and flip me off on Twitter again for all these
jokes.
They
don't listen to us. So
no, they don't.
I mean, if anything, we should be ripping on Paul, but that's a different story.
Paul's the best.
So anyway, right. So let's go ahead and wrap this up now. This has been the NC Speakeasy Podcast. I am Chris Green, and he is Mark Skog, and we will be back next month to discuss if the Cavaliers are still working towards a championship or if they got sent home early, what the Browns decided to do in the draft, and what are the Indians up to at that point, so, and whatever else may come up. So thank you, everybody. Have a good evening, and Mark, send us off.
All right. Night-night, everybody. We'll see you all later.